Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our MarRI-UK webinar today. My name's John Hudson, and I will be chairing today's session. As many of you know, MarRI-UK is an independent organisation that seeks to foster innovation in the marine sector by working collaboratively across industry, academia, government, so that we can deliver practical outcomes for industry. Today's webinar is entitled Wind Propulsion Technology and the Maritime Market. And I'm delighted to welcome our three expert panelists. We have Diane Gilpin, who is the founder and CEO of Smart Green Shipping, Frank Hedricks from Hagland Shipbrokers, who has a wealth of experience in shipping and ship owning, and Camille Bourgeon from the IMO with a wealth of experience in maritime regulation. Of course, sailing ships, wind-propelled vessels is nothing new. They've been around for thousands of years. There's archaeological evidence of sailing ships on the Nile 5,000 years ago, papyrus rafts, so it's been around for a long time. Wind-propelled vessels have really driven the whole world in many ways. They enabled global voyages, they resulted in colonizations, and enabled world trade. So it's a hugely important sector. With greater need for energy security and the drive towards reduced carbon emissions, now is the time to have a look at the application of wind technology in the marine propulsion field. So I'm very excited about this session. I think it's highly relevant in today's world. What we plan to do is the panelists will each introduce themselves for a couple of minutes so that you get a sense of them and their backgrounds. And then what we will do is we will ask the panelists questions. We already have a couple of questions, so I will ask the panelists those questions. But if you could think of your questions and add them to the Q&A tab in the application, we will then look at those and ask our panelists those questions. So, with no further ado, if I could ask Di Gilpin to introduce herself, that would be great. Over to you, Di. You're on mute.
Thank you, John, and thank you, MarRI-UK, for hosting this important event, as you say. I'm Diane Gilpin. I'm the founder and CEO of Smart Green Shipping. I've spent a lifetime working in innovation, and you might be able to tell from my face that I'm not in the first flush of youth, but I started work in last century when mobile phones hadn't been invented, and I was on the launch team for cellular technology. And when we first went to market with cell phones, people said, oh, no one will ever want one of those. And I think we demonstrated that they might actually find a use for them. I went from there to work in Formula One, and what we are developing, what we learn in both Formula One, both in cellular telephones, is that the key part of adoption is around new business models. That the technology is something that's really, really important, but it is also how do you wrap it around, because no one buys innovation just because they like the look of it. No one buys it because it's just a exciting new piece of technology. So we've been working on new business models. I think when I've stopped working in F1, I started to become aware of climate. I started to become aware of the opportunities. And for me, I moved into yacht racing and became aware of global climate challenges and the merchant marine sector, and thought, oh, there's a bit of an opportunity here. So I set up Smart Green Shipping in 2014. Having spent some time working in renewable energy. So the kind of career progression was how is it that I can make some sort of contribution to the climate and nature crises? And so what I was aware of was that it's more than just carbon. It's more than just emissions. It's about how do we do more with less? And how do we do it in terms of materials and resources? And what that does is it creates quite a challenge because you're starting to think about a whole system solution. And that is difficult, and shipping is known to be hard to abate, but it is difficult to win a world championship. It is difficult to sail the wrong way around the world in a yacht race, but people do it. And so we're not fazed by that, oh, it's difficult challenge. If you actually start to think about the challenge as something beyond just substituting one sort of fuel with another, you start to get a whole systems collaboration and transformation needed, and that becomes quite a thrilling journey. And so what we've done at SGS is to sort of replicate an F1 business model, which is, we kind of find the people who can do the right, can deliver the best technology and the best solutions for solving a problem. So we work collaboratively across the whole industry. We bring in strategic partners with skills and knowledge from merchant marine, from yacht racing, from defence, from offshore wind, onshore wind, renewables, all those types of different technologies. We're looking at different materials. We're looking at how we're building the circular economy. We're working with data scientists to see how any of our developments work. Crucially, we engage with lawyers, with financiers, and with academics, as you can see here, by working with Strathclyde, about how do we develop a new system with a new operational protocol. So with that collaboration, we've created solutions to technical, commercial, regulatory, and operational barriers. And so basically, we have been turning this complexity into a commercial advantage. So I'm really pleased that we've been supported by MOL, the world's second largest shipping company, Drax, UK's largest energy supplier, and the Scottish and the UK government to start from the outset with a circular design that has been validated by the fuel saving performance work that we did last year. We can talk about that a bit more later. We've demonstrated that we can guarantee fuel save performance through our prediction tools, and what that does is deliver 2.5 times the value to our investors. So that's kind of a very quick whistle-stop tour of what we're about, and I'm hoping that I can talk a little bit more about the tech and the solutions a bit later on, but that's what SGS is and how we got here.
Thank you very much. Frank.
Thank you, John, and thank Jai with the words on your side. Quick, you show the screen with me? Yeah, thank you. RG Hagland is the mother company of Hagland Shipbrokers and has been in service for about 150 years. We were established in 1872. We started, besides shipbroking, also with ship owning, and had many sailing ships in the 19th century. The transition to steam was not made, but we started to sail again in the 80s with diesel-driven mini bulkers. At the moment, we have about 8 ships in service, 4 being built. You see the last launching behind me, about 1.5 weeks ago. And hopefully we will continue with sail in the future again. Next slide, please. Yeah. The shipbroking activities are done in these sectors from the offshore, renewables, aquaculture, dry cargo, and tank via 4 offices around the North Sea. Our main office in Hagland in Norway. Then we have in Denmark, Esbjerg, an office in Hamburg, Germany, and in Aberdeen, Scotland. So we have an office. Next slide, please. This is really why we are here today. This is a screenshot from last night. Trading area of a ship. If we see the forces which are there, it's a waste of not taking use of it. I've been sailing myself as a youngster to the year of age, 8 years, on small dinghies, and I've always seen the forces of wind and waves during my 10 years at sea, both in the merchant and the navy of Dutch vessels. And I've always imagined we need to do something with this energy which is there. And I've been sailing thereafter still on when they stopped at serving ships by myself in the fjords of Norway, and like to use this source. When I started on a new building project earlier this year for a company we are part owners of with chemical tankers, I went around to see what is available in wind assisted propulsion and have made contact with the major suppliers and discussions with them. And there are many good solutions available on the market. But what struck me a bit is that the majority don't really go deep into what can we do to make it a good sailing ship. It's an putting a sail on a ship and have a certain power on this and fuel savings. But when I met Smart Green Shipping and I a couple of months ago, we started elaborating what really can be done to make it better, make use of the wind which is there and optimize the ship completely, not only putting sail on, but the superstructure and the hull, and see what we can do to really make it a sailing ship. So I'm looking forward in the discussion today in this panel to see what we can some further over there.
Thank you. And that's a fantastic slide, which really absolutely illustrates the opportunity. Camille.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, John. Thanks, Diane and Frank, for your words as well. So my name is Camille Bourgeon, and I have been, after working in the French Maritime Administration on navigation safety issues, have been working in the IMO Secretariat now for a bit more than 8 years in the Environment Division, where I have been supporting the development of regulations to reduce the environmental impact of shipping, in particular in terms of air pollution, energy efficiency, overall greenhouse gas emissions. And working in the Secretariat fundamentally means supporting our member states, and in particular facilitating consensus, which is the main way forward at the IMO. And just allow me to say a few words about a few general comments where we are. I have learned that in working with governments, it means taking into account their priorities, including the wider climate and energy international landscape on these issues. Also mentioning that the energy transition of shipping is a reality already, and I think this event today is an example of that. Lots of development in recent years, and despite geopolitical tensions, despite headwinds, IMO is committed, and that's really a key message I wanted to convey, is committed to delivering on the ambitions of the 2023 IMO greenhouse gas reduction strategy. It's net zero ambition. And in a competitive and global sector like shipping, the way to go is global regulations, fundamentally to really have an impact at scale. And the IMO net zero framework is a key part of it. So as you probably know, well, the extraordinary session of the Marine Environment Protection Committee was adjourned for a period of 1 year in October. Work continues. Work continues on in the meantime on important aspects of shipping decarbonization, on safety, and I think we're going to speak about safety later, on fuel and technology life cycle assessment. I think we also need to speak about that because that's a key element, measuring what's happening on board, and that includes how to set, enabling conditions to encourage the uptake of low emission fuels, low emission technologies like wind. And so this is part of a bigger picture, but it is definitely getting more and more traction. And we saw even in the most recent discussions that we had the week after the extraordinary session of MEPC that wind propulsion technologies were actually part of the discussion. So happy to be here, and over to you, John. Thank you. And you're muted, I think. John, I think you're muted.
Beg your
Yes.
pardon.
No
So
worries.
thank you for that. And as you can see, we've got a very expert panel. So I'm looking forward to the debate. We'll start with a couple of questions that have already been sent through and developed. If I can start with this one, what are the challenges and drivers, be they commercial, regulatory, financial, etc., currently impacting maritime markets? And how does wind propulsion technology fit into this? Perhaps, Di, if you could start that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the world is challenging at the moment. The narrative around decarbonisation, around transition is being delayed by geopolitics. But I think, and I think that is making life more difficult for quite a lot of solutions and technologies. But I also think that I mean, we've seen that global trade is increasing, but the market isn't quite as flush as it might have been. So it's not quite prepared to be as ambitious and as courageous with being a first mover with new technologies. So I think those are some of the real challenges. But on the more positive side, we are seeing in our business, we're seeing uptake from organizations that have an internal global corporate commitment to sustainability, and they're not being swayed by anything external, and they're continuing to progress. We're seeing a need for evidenced scope 3 emissions, so transport and logistics emissions reductions. We're seeing the need for that. And what that does is if the shipping industry can develop cost-effective, low carbon, low emission solutions, then that asset becomes more marketable amongst more cargo owners, more charterers. So I think the demand is the IMO situation has created uncertainty, and I think that isn't tremendously helpful, but I know that everybody at IMO worked incredibly hard and still does. So it's not in any way a criticism. That framework is with consensus that we all need that, so the market has certainty. But in the interim, what we're finding is that wind assist is a no regret solution, and so people are looking for ways of developing low cost, reducing their cost, their operational costs. And then there's a challenge with how you interact with the complex commercial structure of merchant shipping.
Thank you.
But I think that's kind of the pluses and minuses of that question.
Frank, from a ship owner's perspective, have you got some thoughts?
Yeah, I first of all agree with Di that the MEPC outcome is unfortunate. And the worst thing that can happen is that regional markets countries are just having their own rules and restrictions. The shipping is a worldwide business, so IMO is very important to have in worldwide regulations. So we sincerely hope it's just only a short delay and that we continue thereafter. What you also were into is that we are still early movers on the wind propulsion. They're still prototype. First movers are normally more expensive than when there is a market. So that's a challenge up front. There is no long-term experience either. So owners investing in wind propulsion don't really know what they have to calculate with maintenance cost and maybe even upgrading or replacing. So these things, these uncertainties are a challenge. But I do agree that the whole market plans look promising. So ship owners are interesting to look at it more and more.
So which segments, Frank, do you think have the most potential for wind propulsion?
It's a good question.
It's one of our members asked that question.
Yeah. I think it's feasible in all segments. Tankers is probably easier. Loading, discharging through a manifold where you are a bit flexible. Okay, there are OSIM rules on that, but you are a bit flexible where to place it. On the PV valves for the ventilation, you can just move them a bit out of the way for the sails. So tankers are maybe the easiest. Dry cargo ships, especially if you go to the smaller ones, they want to have the holds open for loading and discharge, and then the sails are often in the way. We've seen the car carriers, just put them on top because they don't have anything there, so that's easier. I believe that container ships are more challenging. These country cranes, they want to have complete full access to the whole deck, and they want to make their moves. So, but there is always a solution.
Yeah. Camille,
from
a regulatory point of view, do you see any sectors as more applicable?
Well, I'm probably not the technical expert to be able to respond to the question which segment is more prone to integrate wind propulsion technologies. But well, I mean, first of all, our regulations are affecting all sectors, and there needs to be solutions for all sectors, all segments, and we of course monitor the technology developments, and we already have the IMO has already developed energy efficiency regulations focusing both on the design and on how the operation of the ships are operated. And I think this has been part of the the context that has contributed to the interest in wind propulsion technologies. But still, work needs to be done in this area. And I get it that wind propulsion technologies can be seen beyond the energy efficiency element, but already today we're seeing only relative to the size of the fleet, only a handful of vessels actually incorporating wind propulsion technologies as a compliance, as a means of compliance for EEDI, EXI, or the CII. So there is room for progress in that field. So I think yes, more work needs to be done also from the wind propulsion technology manufacturers, and they're already working on it through, in particular, through the IWSA at the IMO, to demonstrate the potential of these technologies in improving, energy efficiency on board to comply with current IMO regulations. Probably work also needs to be done to improve the current guidance on how to reflect these energy efficiency technologies, including wind, on these existing frameworks. The wind matrices are probably a bit outdated now. A lot of work, research, trials have been conducted recently, and I think all of these experiences should be shared. We're still at this stage where, for I think the technologies to reach commercial maturity, there needs to be further, exchange of experience and openness to actually, share highly granular data on the performance of these devices to create the confidence that is needed for the clients, for the ship owners, for the charters, and for the regulators ultimately.
Thank you. We might return to some of those themes, but we'll carry on with the sort of owner-operator side of things. What are the things that ship owners factor, or what do they consider when what are the factors that determine their approach when considering adopting wind technology? What are the obstacles, the barriers, and the things that concerns potential operators? Perhaps, Di, you've dealt with a number of companies. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that it's a big ask. We're talking to a number of ship owners. We're asking them to consider technical, economic, commercial, safety aspects. And I think being aware of that, being aware of the fact that there's a lot of sensitivity across the whole company is important. So we are working, because we've installed and deinstalled quickly and simply on a ship last year for our sea trials, we are able to demonstrate that a swift and simple integration is possible, but that needs good planning in advance. We need to be absolutely confident about the safety aspects. And so we have an excellent relationship with LR, who we worked with on who we've been working with from our inception, on how does the crew engage with this technology and how safe is it and what are the safety procedures. We were very grateful and privileged to work with the crew of a ship called the Grebe last year, Pacific Grebe. They were pretty reluctant before they set sail about having this technology imposed on them. But within, I don't know, an hour of the first raise of the rig, they were really super enthusiastic and fed back. We worked with the Worshipful Company of Master Mariners to figure out how that interfaces with the way that ships operate. So there's a kind of technical stuff, but then there's the commercial piece, which is, who's going to pay for the installation? Who's going to say how much fuel? So this kind of intersects with what Camille was saying earlier. How much fuel is going to be saved? How do we know this? How do we validate it? And so that's work that we're doing now as well, which we can talk about later. But there's the business case. And then who benefits from it? Is it the ship owner? Is it the charterer? Is it the cargo owner? Because somebody has to pay for it and someone gets the fuel save benefit. So we're working with legal firms, with BIMCO, to try and figure out how we divide up the benefit. So it's about the risk and about the reward and finding a way to navigate through all of those challenges. And that has to be done collaboratively. We have to work across the whole ecosystem in order to overcome all of the challenges. But none of those challenges are insurmountable. They just we need to understand what they are, and we need to figure out how to solve them, but none of them are showstoppers.
I was interested in your comments about the crew, and perhaps I might ask this one of Frank, but I sometimes think shipping can be quite conservative as an industry for good reason. People are making long-term investments, and the environment is very challenging. And sometimes when we introduce innovations, there's a sort of giggle factor. People don't take it seriously. And I just wondered whether there was a giggle factor associated with wind-propelled shipping, and there was a sort of inherent resistance to it just because it just sounds like it's something, sort of wacky or something for Oracle to worry about on sailing competitions. I don't know, Frank, is there a giggle factor associated with wind?
Yeah, but then the people had to be already positive for wind from the beginning. I think a lot of them, as you said, they don't like changes, and they see only the the negative sides, and they fear that it's difficult for the sales. But having said that, experience here with two Norwegian ship owners who have done it for a couple of years and a couple of months is very promising indeed. By itself, with the sails, the ship is moving much less rolling and pitching. It is more stable. So it's a better platform for the sailors to sail on. It's more comfortable. So if they notice that, they are getting more positive for sailing. If they notice that it's not so dangerous, it's getting an advantage. And there even can be a challenge between crews who does the best. We've seen on our own ships, they are hybrid ships, and with hybrid propulsion and battery systems. And it really depends on the master primarily. If he has got it in his fingers and wants to really adjust it to the utmost, then you can get them very good results. And the same goes with sales. If you just have somebody on board who understands what sailing is, and changing course slightly can have a much better speed. If people start to understand that, I think that's very important.
Thank you.
One thing also Dai was into the demands. So far, we have seen that it's primarily owners who pay their own bunkers are interested to do it. There are hardly any charterers willing to pay the additional time charter hire for it. That's a challenge.
Interesting. We have seen in rail some customers wanting to promote a green agenda and actually accepting a slight premium to have electric propelled traction rather than diesel. So that's an interesting observation. So I have another question, which is, how would the approaches differ when retrofitting a vessel for wind propulsion versus a new build? Frank, have you got some perspectives on that?
Yeah, that's of course, with a retrofitting, you have to deal with the thing which is there. You have to find a place where you can place the sails, one, two, or more. It has to do with maybe stability. So there are many restrictions for retrofitting. For new building, then there are two options. Either just keep the same ship-like hull form and put the sails on the best position and dimensions you can get them, or have a completely new approach and look on the whole ship, including accommodation interface with the sails and also the hull shape. Can we do something on the hull shape to make it better sailing ships? And if you do that, then you could also probably install smaller main engines and having saving there, where instead of having a completely additional investment on sails only.
I've got a specific question from Simon Bullock, which says, are there any specific designs suitable for container ships? I mean, are you aware of, you talked about container ships a little earlier, but are you aware of any, solutions for container applications?
I have not seen, but I'm not primarily working in the container market. I'm in tankers and small dry cargo ships primarily, but I haven't seen them, to be frank. Some container feeders, yes, but not the big ones.
Hasn't there been some tests with kites on container ships?
Yes, I think.
I think so. Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Just to pick up on a comment from Dai about the experience of the Grebe, what's the impact of sail technology with the crew? How do you see that being managed, and what's the reaction of the crew?
I mean, the giggle factor that I hadn't heard that expression, but I'm going to adopt it immediately. I think it's really exactly describing what it was like. It was, and the master, it was his last passage before he retired. So I think he was a little bit like, I thought I was just going to go and have my feet up for a few weeks. But they really engaged with it. They really enjoyed the opportunity and feeling the power that was generated from the wings. They were surprised that it was quite so well designed. I think the question about retrofit, we are retrofitting onto something that has a suboptimal hull design. So they weren't really expecting anything more than a kind of a gimmick, and they could titter about it. But like I said, they were very, very enthusiastic, and we had fitted the grebe with multiple sensors for measuring performance across the ship, and the whole crew became really interested in how that was, what the impact was. We operated the sea trials under ITTC protocols, and because we chartered the vessel, we were able to go into different wind speeds, wind angles, and measure that against our electronic digital modeling. And they became super interested in all of that. To the extent they had a whiteboard in the engine room and provided us with a lot of feedback on how we could both improve the technical design of the wing, the installation and de-installation approach, and the crew interface. So it was the wing is intelligent, it's automated, so it knows which way the wind's blowing, and it can configure itself, optimize itself. But they still were able to make significant contributions to our command and control system. So I think people say that shipping is a conservative industry. I'm not entirely convinced that it's any more conservative than the population at large. Nobody wants to be the first person to, I don't know, drive an automated car or put a solar panel on their roof. I mean, there has to be this transition, this innovation where first movers are courageous and visionary, like Hagland are with Wind Assist and with their thinking. So I think what we as technology developers have to do is to recognize that the customer, whoever they may be, whether they're the crew or the owner or the operator, need to have need their position to be taken into consideration, and we need to do that in consultation with all parties.
So what about the sort of human factors side in terms of training and feedback to the crew and trying to get them enthused in the technology? How much has the thinking gone in offshore, in shoreside training facilities or communicating the technology to the crew?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a key part of our work and analysis around, and as I say, with the input and the feedback from the actual crew who ran it, and Master Mariners associations. Nautilus have had a few conversations. We've worked with LR about how that can all be safety managed protocols, operational protocols. But it's not massively difficult. The technology will retract if the wind is too great. If it's above 35 knots of wind, then the wing automatically comes down. It will articulate to, as I say, pick up the most optimum wind angle. And all of that can be encapsulated into a virtual reality training module that you can have the experience of sailing these vessels, your vessel, with your ship on it. And that's one of the beauties of 21st century technology, is that we can give you the experience. Now, that's not the same as what it's going to be like when you're at sea. And in fact, when we were doing our sea trials, rather paradoxically, we had to drop the rig so we could go and make a support rescue for the RNLI because a yacht had got into trouble in storm force winds. So, the sea is unpredictable. We all know that, but we are absolutely committed to getting the best amount of knowledge and experience in before deploying in the real world.
So you could bring the technology into bridge simulators and that sort of.
Absolutely.
Very
And
good.
if I may, there is on the regulatory side, there's actually an opportunity which is starting now, the review of the STCW convention and code with training standards for seafarers, with an enhanced focus on the human element. I mean, we've all experienced how the great experience and enthusiasm from a crew can really help the incorporation of innovative technologies and best practices as well. We've seen it with weather routing, with lots of technologies and innovations. So I think for wind, and I've heard many fascinating stories of the crew really sharing their experience. I think that also can play a great role in sort of mainstreaming these technologies, showing the benefits for the crew itself, sharing the enthusiasm. So yeah, it also in a way can feed into the regulatory processes that take time, but also need the input from the industry, from other NGOs, through the member states, through the experience of maritime training academies. Um, the 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 incorporation of wind propulsion technologies in the regulation is not only MARPOL and is not only going to be in the net zero framework or other regulations. It's really it has to be incorporated, and that's something the Maritime Safety Committee is already looking into, the safety implications and the impact on the seafarers themselves.
Thank you. While you're speaking, what would you see as sort of potential market actions that might help the adoption of wind technology? What sort of regulation will have a role in this, I imagine. But
Yeah,
do you
absolutely.
have a perspective on that?
No, I mean definitely the for the technology to really achieve commercial maturity, and um, a step further beyond the current um, pilot development stage. Um, it needs favorable commercial conditions and enabling environment that make these technologies uh, needed for compliance essentially. And so interestingly, in the discussions during the October session of MEPC, there was actually an agreement to incorporate, to consider wind as a net zero energy input, essentially in the metric. So the metric that is being worked on is the GFI, greenhouse gas fuel intensity, which really under the IMO net zero framework is the first step. This is how you actually assess the greenhouse gas intensity of a fuel and then of a ship. So this needs to be done right, because whatever the measure ultimately, there is already an agreement to have a well-to-wake approach of not only CO2 but other greenhouse gases. So we need a metric like the GFI. So work, and I think there was a question in the chat as well. Work on the LCA guidelines, work on the LCA framework. This continues. Work on the GFI continues. Um, so the week after the October session, there was an intersessional working group on greenhouse gases, and one of the topics that was discussed is the GFI metric. There are different approaches. The IWSA proposed this fuel equivalent approach. The working group encouraged further discussions, technical discussions, so that in April this year, the committee can advance the technical guidelines, and all this really contributes to setting, favorable market conditions, irrespective of, the GFI reduction factors, of the Z&Z rewards, of the economic element, etc., having the metric right is key, is really key. So my encouragement at this stage also would be for all the interested stakeholders to focus their efforts on this, to make sure that there is a common understanding of the situation, how the metric can best accommodate the various wind propulsion technologies at the different stages of development in a technology neutral way. But I really think that the GFI is the right vehicle and can accommodate these technologies and can be a key driver in the global adoption of these technologies.
Thank you. Frank, Di, any thoughts about what are the Di?
Yeah.
Some enablers that might help.
So absolutely, IMO, global regulation is critically important for an international industry, and we absolutely support that. I think that I have, and it may seem pedantic, but I want to express the fact that wind is not energy efficiency unless you assume the only energy available comes through fuel. Wind is, as Frank pointed out at the beginning of the presentation, is an energy source in its own right. And so it means that it's generating power through thrust for the vessel. And so what that does is it reduces the amount of fuel that you need to use. Now, we have a GFI, global fuel. So I think that, we have to go with what we've got. We can't change that, but I do think that it's important to express that difference. And the reason why is not necessarily to do with regulation, it's to do with getting investment into new technologies. If we go to the investment market, venture capitalists want to be involved in big, sexy, exciting projects, which are about, new energy solutions, energy transition, that sort of thing. If we talk about energy efficiency, there's a lower level of appetite. So if you're applying for funding, you generally have to go through some sort of tick box criteria. If you say your energy efficiency, they go, we're not interested in you because I want to be involved in the next big thing. So I think that, it's kind of understanding the wider umbrella position. I absolutely understand how we got to GFI, but I just want to be expressing the fact that we should be less fuel centric and look at the energy transition. How do we move these ships through the water? Because as you said at the top, John, we've been doing it for 5,000 years using non-fuel solutions. So I think that's really, really important. But I also think that we need to, I'm not fazed by the fact that the uptake is not rapid, because we need that whole kind of interconnected commercial and regulatory landscape to progress. And it's always messy at the beginning of an innovation process. It starts off slow, and then it rapidly grows. I've seen that in previous innovation projects that I've been working on, including offshore and onshore wind. So I think there's none of it's unexpected, but there is a lot of work that we need to do. And we are encouraged by the fact that the industry, the regulators, and the off-takers, the cargo owners, are all really enthusiastic about working together on exciting projects like Wind Assist.
Very good. Frank, what's your perspective?
Yeah, just a small comment. I was very pleased when I got the invitation for the webinar that it says wind propulsion technology and not wind assisting propulsion. Because
I've used it for so long.
That's what we're talking about. That's the right move. And I've seen a change as well. When I mentioned in the conversation with ship owners on new buildings, wind sails on board 5-10 years ago, well, they were a bit hesitating. Well, no, we're not going to discuss about it. If you take it up now, they're open. The majority are asking for what can we do with sails? What is the possibility? So there's a big change going on at the moment that owners in general are open to discuss it. That's a very important move. And the second thing, but that we mentioned by both Camille and I, the business case, the commercial factors have to fit. Shipping is not a philanthropic institution. We have to make money in the end. So if the business case isn't going to work out, then they're not going.
Sometimes with innovation, you need a champion. You need somebody to sort of like get behind it and believe in it. And I just wonder how difficult it is to secure a champion for wind assist.
Well, if I can just jump in quickly, since about our first foray into this space was with the University of Southampton in 2009, and we took a new build 100% renewable power design to Drax, the energy company, the renewable sustainable energy company on the East Coast. And they have been a champion for us since then. And they have introduced us to all of the ship owners that they work with. And as a consequence of that, we've secured a lot of investment, not from them, although they have invested, but from other investors who see that commitment from a champion. I think we're seeing Cargill are championing wind as an off-taker. So I think you're absolutely right. You need it. But it's about the whole. I keep saying this, but it's about the whole of the kind of end-to-end system that everybody needs to be generating the pull and have the conversation. And then, like Frank says, you start to get wind propulsion. Got it right that time on the agenda. Where people are actually going, oh, actually, I've seen. So get first movers out there, and
Absolutely,
they break down the
You
barriers.
need to see it. You need to see ships turning up at ports with wind.
That's right, exactly. And we're starting to see that more and more. And then that makes people go, well, that's interesting. How can I, maybe I don't want to be a first mover, but I might be a second mover.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are at the moment. We've got a lot of interest from the market.
And what, through life is an important aspect. What provisions, arrangements can be made for through life? Because I don't know what the lifespan of one of these rigs would be, but ship owner doesn't want to buy something and not be able to support it, for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to just jump in here because that's absolutely critical to our business case. We would lease the technology because we would take the risk of its lifetime, because we are doing an awful lot of work in destructive and non-destructive testing to be able to predict the performance lifetime of the technology. And the way that we've designed it is to be taking existing technology and combining it in new ways. So we've got a lot of performance on the materials that we use, on the components that we use. We know how they operate in marinized solutions. We're just combining them in a new way so that gives us confidence and gives the financiers who sit behind us confidence to extend the credit for a longer period of time. But it's a really critically important thing. And it's a great shame that you spend years raising the funds to build a wing sail, and then you have to go and destroy it so you can see how robust it is.
I've got a great question from Stuart McKenna, and he says one of the big problems in the wind propulsion market is over-promising on the impact and savings. How can credible validation based on real operation be achieved?
I feel this is a key barrier to the wider uptake of wind propulsion technologies, which is basically the trust in the performance of the systems. Perhaps some other estimations were put on the table at some point. I'm also happy to see that there is actually work going on. I don't know whether you noticed the recent report from the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization in Singapore. They've done a great job, I think, in precisely. I think it's a section sales technology in putting the building blocks of you know, a potential standardized measurement methodology. I really see it as a must-have. Through one of our projects, which is called Green Voyage 2050, we have worked in the past few years on an appraisal tool for, it's not specifically for wind, it's for any energy efficiency technology. That is the angle that really would allows any stakeholder, it's mostly designed for ship owners, to really benchmark a specific ship's performance before and after the installation or the implementation of a measure. And this appraisal tool is free of charge. It's available for use for anybody. So I would really encourage people to make use of it, share the feedback, share experience, because to me this is really a key element of the journey, making sure that there is trust in the performance based on real life conditions, obviously. I'm glad to see that work is going on this field.
Di, do you want to come in?
I do, yes, and I'm conscious that we've only got 2 minutes left, and I apologise to everybody. But when I set out on this journey, having come from offshore and onshore wind, I knew that the accelerator for the technology was having trusted data. So since we incorporated SGS in 2014, we have been working on digital twins, effectively, of the various ships that we work with and the various routes that we work with. Now, it's so the wind power market was unlocked by a tool that was developed by the Met Office called Virtual MetMast, which it was independent, gave everybody confidence that the numbers that came out of that were okay to contract around so that project partners could work together. That's what we've been developing for the last, goodness knows, 10 years. The point that we've been, what we've been doing in the last 12 months is developing that model and then testing it in the real world against ITTC guidelines, so that we have confidence that our electronic model is predicting performance, and we can, in a way that we're comfortable with, guaranteeing performance for our customers, because you can use the electronic model validated by the work that we did on the sea trials last year with a chartered vessel that we could run the protocol with. That showed that our electronic model, our digital model, was highly accurate, gives us the power to guarantee performance because we can run that model on any ship, on any route. And then that helps us to bring together contracting parties. And I think that there has been a real problem with over-promising and under-delivering. And so we are, as an organisation, very keen to be developing the model and using it with our customers to be able to guarantee performance.
Thank you. Well, as you point out, we're coming to the end of our session. So I'd like to thank our panelists. I'd like to thank those who contributed questions. If anybody does have any questions, the panelists have kindly offered to respond to those. So if you have any questions that haven't been answered, please forward them on to MarRI-UK. I think there's an email link in the chat. So if you would like to ask any further questions, do that, and I'm sure the panelists will help by responding. I think we've only scratched the surface of this topic today. It is extremely timely, and I think it's been fascinating to see the breadth of considerations here, from commercial to technical to through life support, to confidence in data. I think it's been a very informative session. So thank you all. Thanks to the panelists, and good afternoon.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.